No matter how experienced you might be, birding with other people can give you a sense of belonging and teach you things you didn't know. But how do you meet other birders? For this month's Chirp Chat, Lake Effect's Excret Nunez spoke with Rita Flores Wiskowski from the BIPOC Birding Club and Caitlin Schuhart from Feminist Bird Club. They share the benefits and joys of finding community with other birders.
It's still winter and I've been feeling cooped up lately. So, for this episode, I thought it'd be nice to get listeners thinking about how to get out there and find community in birding. But I want to start by asking you both, how did you first become interested in birding? Rita, let's start with you.
Well, I've always been kind of interested in nature, and my family has always encouraged that with me and my brothers. But I think what really sparked that interest was probably way back in second grade. We had a man, his name is Gene Johansson, who was the custodian at Blakewood Elementary School in South Milwaukee. And as part of our nature science curriculum, he was tasked to take us kids out. And it was just fun to be out there. And I don't know if we really paid much attention to what he was pointing out until one day he stopped and pointed out a jack in the pulpit plant. And it was the first time that it occurred to me that things in nature, if you pay attention, have beauty and names and really interesting details about them. And so then after that, we called him Mr. Joe. After that, whenever Mr. Joe would point something out, I would pay attention. And he started pointing out the chickadees and the downy woodpeckers and those kinds of things, and really sparked that interest in wanting to know the nature of these things that we're seeing and the way they act, the way they sound, and just all the details and the beauty of them. So that's what started it for me.
That's so beautiful, Rita. Does Mr. Joe know this?
I thought he did, and then 2 years ago, I ran into him in the park, and he was teasing me for being out there birding, and I said, "Well, this is your fault, Mr. Joe," and I reminded him of those nature walks, and he teared up. He was really moved by the fact that he was that spark for me. So I was glad to be able to tell him. He's still long retired, but still lives in South Milwaukee.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. Caitlin, what about you? How did you first become interested in birding?
Yeah, so my interest in birding actually came through the Feminist Bird Club, where I joined at my very first bird outing. So I actually saw a flyer for the club. This was back in 2019, shortly after it had first been created. And I think it was maybe the second or third outing that they'd ever held. Before that, I could maybe name 10 birds, like sandhill cranes, American robins, like stuff that I was familiar with from just like getting outside and hiking around because I really did like to be outdoors. But I had at that time recently dropped out of grad school and I had lost kind of a community of people around me that I was seeing on a regular basis. And I was like, I need to find some friends. And so I actually put myself in a spot where I was like, maybe I'll meet cool people at this feminist bird club because that just sounds exciting to me. And it was an experience that really changed my life. In the way that Rita, you talked about, like how you start to realize that there's so much in nature, like that has names and there's stories behind it. I had that same experience on this outing where I found myself stepping into a whole new world where, the 10 species that I thought we might see turned into over 40 species in just
Wow.
2 hours. And I couldn't not see birds after that. It was like the world just became different from that moment on. I got my own binoculars soon after. I started regularly attending feminist bird club events and other events in the Madison area. And yeah, that was kind of a pivotal moment for me. And it really changed my life because from that first outing, birds really kind of grabbed me and I started learning more about environmental conservation. I found a new career path after having dropped out of school. And I found a whole new community of people and of friends that are still a huge, important part of my life to this day. And I learned to explore the Madison area in a completely different way. So that one outing was such a pivotal moment for me. And it came about because I decided to go out on a group outing with a club that didn't know anything about beforehand. I took a chance on it.
I love that. You're each a leader of a birding club, but how did you discover your club? Caitlin, you already answered that question. So I guess why did you decide to join in the first place? Specifically the Feminist Bird Club.
So I think part of the reason that the chapter really connected with me and a part of the reason I joined the leadership team is to really create a more inclusive space in the birding world. So our chapter from its very inception back in 2019 has always been about actively kind of creating a space for underrepresented identities, whether that is women that are looking for a place to connect with other women, or individuals that identify as trans or non-binary or queer or people of color. Sometimes certain folks don't always feel welcome or safe alone outdoors, or joining groups that they don't know who they're going to encounter, and having a very purposeful space for people to gather felt really important for me. And that's what drew me to joining the club and feeling like I can come here and I can be myself and I can be around other people that I know I'm going to align with. And the birds became just a huge benefit on top of that too.
Absolutely. And Rita, what about you? Why did you decide to join the BIPOC Birding Club of
Sure.
Wisconsin?
So I am on the board for the Wisconsin Metro Audubon Society, and I've really enjoyed that. And I was tasked with trying to help figure out how to make birding more diverse. And this is a wonderful group of people who are very intentional about trying to welcome people, but it wasn't working as far as bringing the diversity. And like Caitlin said, there's like that intention with the BIPOC Birding Club. That's kind of the key, is to have a group with that intention. So when the BIPOC Birding Club started, it started with Dexter Patterson and Dr. Jeff Galligan. The two of them started this club. And I had known Jeff for probably 12 years before that. We've birded together and knew each other through the birding community. And he called me and told me what they had started and asked me if I wanted to join in the leadership. And I jumped at that opportunity because it just sounded like maybe this is the key, and it sure was.
So I feel similarly into what you guys were saying of wanting to find community. So for me personally, I'm in my mid 20s and I'm learning that it's so hard to make friends as an adult. So, how would you both recommend people go about finding other people to bird with? Caitlin?
Yeah. So my advice, from you might probably tell from the story that I told about how I got into the hobby, is really to go find a birding club that you feel like you connect with and go regularly. Sometimes it can feel so intimidating to go to something where you're just like, I don't know anyone there. Who am I going to talk to? Like what's going to happen? And I think for both the BIPOC Birding Club and the Feminist Bird Club in Madison, and even Southern Wisconsin Bird Alliance, like we have just an absolute like treasure trove of birding outings where you can go even if you know nothing about birds and feel like you're truly welcomed, and people are going to greet you. You're not going to feel like you're completely like siloed there by yourself just because you don't know anyone. And I think one thing that I'll add for both of us is that we also have really exciting like online communities. So if you are feeling social anxiety is a real thing. Getting out and
Mm-hmm.
joining a group that you don't know anyone feels a little bit difficult, but we both have really exciting online spaces where you can also connect with the groups kind of in advance and see like, is this the right environment for me? Like see what bird pictures people are sharing and things like that. I know the BIPOC Birding Club has a really wonderful Facebook group where people can connect and share their birding stories and share photos and talk about where they're going, plan meetups. The Feminist Bird Club Madison chapter has a Discord channel. So it's kind of a private online space for our community where we offer similar opportunities for people to share what they're up to. There's a channel just for planning meetups if you want to kind of go out with other people. But you can also build friendships in online spaces, and then can make it easier, I think, for you to show up at an outing when you already have a sense of like, okay, I feel like I know that this space is going to work for me.
So it seems like the answer is to put yourself out there. Rita, do you have any advice to add to that?
Her advice was spot on. I totally agree. Just go out there, find a group, talk to people. Conversations naturally will happen because you all have that same desire to learn, to look at birds, to enjoy nature. So it naturally happens. With the BIPOC Birding Club, when you come and you're a brand new birder, we cheer because we love that. We love the new people who are coming on. We want them to feel welcome. We're genuinely excited about having new people and getting this hobby to be more accessible to more people.
You both have really great advice. So, What do you think are some of the benefits of birding with community? Like, I'd love for you both to share that joy with me. Rita, is that okay if I start with you?
Sure. Yeah, I think the benefits are really the learning opportunities. I mean, besides the community, I mean, you can really learn from other people. If they've been out there, they know how to identify the birds, they know what to watch for, what certain birds do, their behaviors, and the conversations around those unique aspects are the natural conversations as you're walking in the woods. So go out there, find a club that is welcoming, and listen and ask questions and enjoy it. I think that's the best way to go about learning. And then there's also benefit in going out by yourself. Just to kind of be out in nature on your own and to notice things on your own. Do those things too if it brings you joy. There's really no wrong way to bird. There really isn't.
Absolutely. Caitlin, what about you? What do you think are some of the benefits of birding with community?
Yeah, well, I want to echo a lot of the things that Rita mentioned. Like, there's a lot of benefits of growing your skills when you're going out with a group. One thing that we really try to let people know is like, even if you don't have any experience birding and you're out among a group with other people that do, like, you still have some value to add to the conversation because everyone sees and hears things so differently. Someone else's eyes might latch onto a field mark that you're not used to looking at or you didn't think to look at, or they might describe a song or a call in a way that you would never thought about. That's one of the things I love about when new birders come to our group. They have completely different ways of describing things that we sometimes are so used to describing. And that is a real value add for everyone because the more ways you have to think about those songs and those calls and those field marks, the better you become at learning them and recognizing them in all these different scenarios. Like Rita mentioned, there's a lot of like kind of like hidden work that goes into learning how to bird. Like you not only have to think about identifying all the different types of birds, and Wisconsin has like nearly like 400 bird species that we could potentially have throughout the year. Then you have to think about what they look like in their different plumages throughout the year because they might look different in the spring and the fall. They might sing different songs. They might have different calls. There's the birds themselves, and then there's the how do I use my binoculars? How do I actually find something when I'm looking for it in a tree? The moment that you're in a group with other people, you have kind of like this really nice support system that where you can not only get guidance about how to do those things, but you also start to just like absorb all the other things that people are talking about. So when Rita was saying that these are going to be natural conversations that are coming up on the outing, like even if you're not ready to jump in and share something, you can still kind of be absorbing what other people are saying and learning how to grow those skills that you can then practice on your own. So there's so much benefit from a skill aspect, but I do think the mental health aspect of it is also such a huge thing for me personally. Being out with other people, being able to experience the rush of like finding something and IDing something is so exciting. Sometimes it's a team effort to do those things and you get to like have this really like nice rush of like adrenaline and success that comes from like we all got eyes on this bird. It was really cool. Like it lingered and it didn't fly away, so we really got to soak it in. And the other thing is that, when you have people of like that are new to birding or kind of getting started in the hobby, like sometimes when you're out on an outing, you get people that are seeing something for the very first time, their first really good look at something like an indigo bunting. And being able to see that joy for someone else is a certain special type of joy for everyone else in the group. So it's the whole environment just like lifts you up. There's so much joy from the birds. There's so much joy from just being around people that are excited and celebrating nature in this way. And so that mental health aspect of like going out with a group and being able to experience the world through the eyes of not just yourself, but the eyes of other people, it's really joyful.
I totally agree. And, kind of going off of that, as somebody who's been birding for a long time, going out with somebody who's new, they'll point out a robin or a chickadee that sometimes, as an experienced birder, we might overlook because we see them all the time and they're common. But when somebody who's new comes to your walk and they are amazed at the beauty of a robin or the cuteness of a chickadee, and then you stand there and watch it, and you remember that they are, because sometimes you forget. And so we have a lot to learn from the new birders, and that's why it's great to have those new birders with us, because those new eyes and that, that wonder that they have is contagious. And so we need to renew ourselves with the wonder of these new birders, and that's why I love being a leader for the BIPOC Birding Club.
So, we've talked a lot about the joys of birding. Let's share a little bit about how people can get to those places and spaces. So, for new and casual birders who aren't looking to travel too far, what are some popular birding spots you recommend people check out that are in your area? Rita, what are some in Milwaukee?
In Milwaukee, especially during the spring when the warblers and all of the very colorful birds are coming through and migrating, the lakefront is phenomenal. Sometimes I don't know where to look. It gets so birdy. I mean, there's just so much to see, and you don't know where to look. It gets a little overwhelming. Milwaukee area birders are very lucky to be so close to Lake Michigan. And then inland, there's Haven Woods State Forest, which is a magical place in the middle of the city. And you can just find things there no matter what season. And also the Ware Nature Center. There's a bird walk there every Sunday, and they're always seeing things, sometimes rare things. And it's just, there's always something to see there. So we have a lot of great spots. I mean, that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg, but those are my favorites.
I think one that comes to mind, which was crazy and amazing for me to discover with you, was Hopkins Hollow.
Oh, yeah, Hopkins Hollow. So Hopkins Hollow is managed by a group called Nearby Nature, and they have been doing a lot of community science surveys at Hopkins Hollow to see what's there and just working to beautify that space. And I love Hopkins Hollow. I think it's a great place to explore.
And it's kind of in the north side of Milwaukee.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
44th and Congress or
in the
Hopkins,
city.
something. Yeah.
And Caitlin, what about you? What are some popular birding spots you recommend people check out in Madison?
Yeah. So Madison, man, we are absolutely spoiled by the number of green spaces and conservation parks that we have within the city, plus the state parks that are in the area too. So there are so many options. During kind of peak fall and spring migration, spots that are stopover spots for migration that are near lakes, like Lakeshore Nature Preserve on UW's campus, Lake Farm County Park, Governor Nelson State Park on the north side of Lake Mendota, Lake Kaganza State Park. They're all just absolutely excellent for birding. But we also have the UW-Madison Arboretum, again, like right in the middle of town. It has such a nice variety of habitat, prairies, woods, nice like springs and creeks. Nine Springs, which is a wildlife area managed by the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District, has just like an abundance of water birds and waterfowl, herons, like just everything you want. Nine Springs is so special. That's actually the very first spot that I went birding with Feminist Bird Club, by the
Wow,
way. So I have a special place in my heart for Nine Springs all the time.
I love that. Well, at the end of every Chirp Chat, I love for guests to shine a spotlight on a bird for the month. What's a bird that you like to highlight this month? Rita, I'll ask you first.
I think, I'd like to highlight the boreal owl. It's small, it's kind of chunky, and when it flies, its wingspan isn't very big. I was very surprised at that. We were talking about community, and I met my friend. Her name is Lori, and we took a road trip to the Saxon Bog, which is in northern Minnesota. And they are having an eruption year of boreal owls, and I had never seen one before. And we were in Duluth, actually, so we hadn't even gotten to the bog. And we were walking along a very heavily used trail, and she grabbed my arm, and we didn't even know it. We were standing right underneath a boreal owl. So as we walked away, we looked at it and then gave it a little distance because you don't want to be all up in a boreal owl's, grill. But it didn't seem to mind, and it was the first time I saw one, and it was very exciting. So that's what I'm going to highlight, the boreal owl.
That's amazing. Caitlin, what about you? What's a bird you'd like to spotlight this month?
I am going to spotlight the black-capped chickadee, in part because it is a resident bird here in our area. So you're going to see it year round, including in the winter. It is one of probably the most like active and kind of exciting birds to watch in the winter because they're busy foraging, they're finding food. It gives you a neat opportunity to kind of watch their behavior because you're likely to see them at pretty much any park that you go to in the winter. One of the other reasons, though, that I wanted to highlight them is because when you're out birding, finding chickadees can also help you find other birds. Today, when we're talking about finding other birders and finding community, to me, the chickadees remind me of that.
Well, Rita and Caitlin, thank you both so much for sharing the joys of birding with me and how to find community in it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was really just wonderful to be here today.
Rita Flores-Wiskowski is a Milwaukee area coordinator with BIPOC Birding Club of Wisconsin. Caitlin Schuhart is on the leadership team for the Madison chapter of the Feminist Bird Club. They spoke with Lake Effect's Excret Nunez for a monthly series we call Chirp Chat.